So here's Nick Quint asks, what is one theological belief that you don't have, but you could see yourself believing in the near future? Well, that's an excellent question. What a fascinating question, right? Wouldn't you guys agree? You know what? You get some matches for that. You guys hear the matches? Let me turn those matches up. That's a smoke room sound effect. You get those matches, baby. All right. The answer's pretty easy. Amillennialism. Amillennialism. As of now, I'm a historic pre-mill. I've been historic pre-mill for a while, but I could see going mill. It would only take I don't know. It would only take a little bit of doing. And there's a few reasons for that. And part of it has to do with the fact that there's some similarities in the positions and their interpretation. The big difference, of course, is it has to do with Revelation 20. Is it literally 1,000 years? As of now, I say yes. So that's a great question, and that would be the answer to that. It would be Mill. I am not Mill. I'm historic pre-mill, but I greatly respect those brothers, and I could see doing it. All right, we got our first guest. Let me bring him on in. Thank you for showing your face. A little who we have. Unless there's some reason fear for your life or something, which I don't think is the case. You are unmuted. Chris, go!
Hey, Vocab, how you doing, man?
Doing all right. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm a fan, bro. Been watching you for the past 2 years. Hold on, I think I have two things open. I don't know
Oh
why
yeah,
here.
headphones are best. If you got headphones, that's the best way to go. Closer you are to the microphone, the better things are. I'll let you get situated if you want, no sweat. And yeah, try to be a little louder if you can. You're a little quiet. I got you up as loud as I can on my end. Yeah. But
Okay,
that'd be the answer there. Vocab, there's a soft echo. Was
yeah,
it
I hear.
only when Chris came on? Was the echo only when Chris came on? Go ahead, brother. Let's see if it's gone. That'd be the answer there. Vocab, there's a soft.
I'm still hearing the echo as well. Should I get out and come back?
Well, I'm making one change on my end that may fix it. What about now? If the soft echo is gone, everybody please give me a 1.
I don't hear it
Hopefully.
anymore.
Okay, I think I fixed it. I think it was on my end, not your end. My bad. See?
Okay, all good. So yeah, bro. I know probably a bunch of people are gonna jump on. I have a couple of questions. I don't really have any smoke for you. I got a lot of respect for you and how you, combat false doctrine and you like are evangelizing in the streets and you kind of have like a street ministry. So I think that's cool, man. I think that's awesome. And it's like kind of the opposite of some churches. They would say, well, just focus on the flock. But, you got stuff going on that's going to affect the flock and has been. So, yeah, respect to you, brother. That's all I wanted to say. Okay.
Honestly, Chris, part of what I believe I try to do when I go out, like say in a street situation, like you mentioned, is actually partially a large part, in fact, for the flock. Because what I want to try to show people is, hey, there are answers to this. We don't need to be afraid, and you can do this too. So part of it is trying to model, something going on. That's actually part of it, if that makes sense. But yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, my first question was, okay, are you familiar with, and if so, what is your opinion on Jews, establishing Noahide communities all over the world?
I've been hearing a little bit about that, but I don't know a whole lot about it, other than it's sort of like a friendlier outreach to have Gentiles in some way align with the God of Israel as they would see it, and they'll do it on the basis of Genesis 9. I've heard a little bit about that movement. Maybe you could tell me a little bit more. I have a couple comments I can make based on what I know now, but
Okay.
if there's any more specifics you have or anything like that, that'd be helpful.
So yeah, it is from the research that I've done. It is, based on Genesis. Uh, there's 7 mitzvahs, as they would say, or commandments that non-Jews can practice to, like, kind of be in alignment with the God of Israel. but from a Jewish perspective. So the seven are established laws: don't curse God, don't practice idolatry, do not engage in illicit sexuality or sexual immorality, do not participate in bloodshed, which is like do not murder, do not rob, and do not eat the flesh from a living animal. So it sounds friendly enough, but one of the things is the do not practice idolatry. From the Jewish
yeah,
perspective, yeah, they view Jesus as an idol.
yeah.
So,
In fact, what you're saying is right. By the way, I have a Jewish friend, and he will not say Jesus' name. And the
mm,
reason why he won't say his name is because, in his understanding of Judaism, they can't say the name of an idol. So he
uh,
doesn't want to say Jesus' name because he doesn't want to say the name of an idol.
mm,
So what he does is, and it sounds disrespectful, maybe, but honestly, considering the alternatives that he could have, which could be hypothetically a more hostile position, about the friendliest thing he could do is what he does. He refers to him as JC. Obviously,
uh,
I'm not a fan of it, but that's a workaround for them to not say an idol in their mind and all that. So what you're saying is right, and everyone listening, he's correct about that. Most interpretations of Judaism wouldn't be allowed to say the name of the idol, so they don't say Jesus' name.
yeah. So that's something that I wanted to put on your radar because, like, the Black Hebrew Israelites and other Mormonism and all these other doctrines are kind of loud and proud in the streets.
Yeah,
But this is kind of a more insidious movement that's growing, and the people who are most susceptible to it are Christians. I've seen a lot of testimonies from Noahides, and they feel that they're being really in line with the people of that time because they want to, you know, because a large part of our doctrine comes from Jewish writings and stuff like that. So they feel like they're
right.
worshiping the God of Israel in the true way. So if you go, and I'll put it in the chat, to noahideworldcenter.org, it shows you all around the world how like blossoming these communities are getting. So it's something that's happening at a fast rate, and it's just it's I'll say, yeah, it's dangerous because Christians are susceptible, and then in order to do this you have to deny Jesus. And some of the most prominent Jewish organizations or groups like Chabad Lubavitch, members of the Knesset, which is like the party in Israel that has control right now, and even
Well,
like
yeah,
some.
you're clearly in the know because you're dropping a lot of stuff that is like people don't know unless they're kind of paying attention to this stuff. Real quick, shout out to Jay Fry, my main man Jay Fry, one of the most faithful supporters for the channel. Jay Fry, you deserve more than sound effects, but right now I give you sound effects. That's applause for you, my friend. Thank you for keeping the show going. By the way, we need, I think it is 4 more patrons to get to 100. So go to patreon.com/vocab. Nate says that means they won't say the name Kelly Clarkson. Wah, wah, wah.
That's funny.
And then lastly, I see one other thing. Mason says, "What is a hat vocab?" I like that. Believe it or not, it's actually a customer at my job, and I work with them doing some stuff, and they're like, you're kind of like family. Grab some of our merch. I was like, okay. And so they had this hat because it's their logo, Proton. They make softball bats and stuff, and I was like, I dig that right there, and I felt like it would go perfect with my Cincinnati orange shirt, baby. Okay, that's low budget swag here. Okay, Zebulon. By the way, I do got you. I'm keeping you up and all that. I'm just talking to Chris Zebulon. Please don't go anywhere. I got you up, and I look forward to talking to you. Just make sure you show your camera when you come on, my friend. Okay. And by the way, I'm pretty sure I know who it is, so it's okay. All right. So, Chris. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I agree with what you're saying so far.
Yeah. All good. So Chuck, I'll wrap up on this, but yeah, I just wanted to put that on your radar. I think it would be cool to, if you were to have some conversations with some rabbis who, what they think their role for Gentiles should be, because like I said, some of the most prominent rabbis, even Maimonides, kind of promotes this idea of Gentiles should be Noahides and follow the seven mitzvahs. and they almost push it. If you look on like the Chabad website or prominent Jewish website, Times of Israel, that it could be. I'm not saying they have the power to do this, but they're saying it could be a one world religion that will bring in a time of peace where everyone's serving, the
I could
the
see them saying that. I could actually see them saying that, and that's sort of like, I guess, what we might call an optimistic view of Judaism, and in their mind, they would be thinking Israel being a light to the nations. That'd be their perspective. Obviously, we wouldn't share that because it's incomplete. It's the
yeah,
faith of Abraham incomplete because they're not tracking all the way to the promised one of Abraham, who of course is Jesus Christ. Uh,
exactly.
so here's some things to say about what you're saying is that even though I'm trying to give sort of compliments where compliments may be okay to give in the sense of, well, it's worse than hardcore secular Jewish things, which basically is not even Judaism anymore at that point, because you have like what they'll call it reform and all these names, but really it just ends up not really being Judaism. I guess it's in one sense better than that, and it's better than the people who are complete separatists, I guess, perhaps as well. However, ultimately, here's the problem, and you've hinted at it several times. Stuff like this leads people away from Christ. Now,
Exactly.
if they're in Christ, they're getting beguiled. And when I say in Christ, what I mean is in some way affiliated. I don't know each person's individual state. We're not getting to that debate. I'm just saying in some way identify as being someone who's in Christ. And then they get going astray because of this. It's leading them away from Christ. And then we say, I marvel. Who's bewitched you, right? Galatians 1, that's what we say. And it's similar to this appeal of like Hebrew roots movement type stuff, where people are like, well, the Hebraic roots of our faith, and we got to start, doing this and doing that, and you're really not doing it right unless you do it like me, and actually you need to, and next thing you know, it's like, where's Jesus figure into this? He's just like an example of a law keeper. I'm talking about the Hebrew roots people now. Now, this is sort of that without Jesus, of course. And, I don't have a rabbi coming on, but I do have a Jewish man coming on pretty soon, religious, practicing conservative Jew. And I
Okay.
may ask him at some point, what's your opinion? And I think he's probably going to talk about something like this, although his particular group is not real big on the outreach sector. He's not with Chabad and all that.
Hmm.
But I imagine he may mention something like this. Is like, well, that's an option, whatever. It'd be interesting to see because what you're saying is correct. And I ultimately, even though, like I said, I'm going to try to give credit where credit is due, it's bad, it's negative, it's not good because, as you're pointing out, draws people away from where they need to be, which is in the Messiah.
Yeah.
And, like, for example, everyone listening, if you're thinking maybe, oh, Acts 15, because if you read Acts 15, there's some overlap between the Noahide laws. Some scholars debate, and they'll say this is the Noahide laws, basically in that era. If you look, they're not identical to the Noahide laws, but they do seem to sort of be based or have a parallel with them. But what's going on in Acts 15? What do we do with all these Gentiles coming in to the fold, right? It appears Acts 15 is sort of a temporary concession. It doesn't appear that that's the thing for all time and that it has to be done that way. It seems like this is what we're doing now. But the main point of Acts 15 is not even necessarily the what I understand to be temporary concessions or temporary measures sort of on the Gentiles. It's the fact that Gentiles are clearly to be understood even by them then as part of God's people and not second-class citizens. And it is interesting, they didn't put the full law on them. Now, when you bring this up to, say, a Hebrew Israelite, they're going to be like, well, yeah, that was like halfway. See, later on, they're going to drop that whole law on them. And I don't believe that's correct either because we don't see that happening. In fact, we see the opposite all throughout the scripture. It's like, no, don't go backwards. Don't go backwards. I mean, the book of Hebrews is big on that. Don't go backwards. It's retrograde. So this is retrograde. This is ignoring essentially the new covenant, regardless of your theological position. We want people to get into this and going all the way back prior to even Abraham, when it's just Noah, his homies, and God, and some kangaroos hopping to Australia, however they got there. You know what I'm saying? So I do agree with your assessment, but go ahead, man, because I said I didn't have much to say, and then I said a lot. So my bad. Go ahead.
No, it's all good, and yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And a huge part of like the Noahide laws would be like they actually don't want Gentiles to practice all the laws. They don't think that they should, and they don't want them to really read any of the teachings or any of that. So it's very interesting. Definitely look into it. Like I said, you have the Jewish guest on. Maybe ask him about it. He might say something about it. What's scary is, like if you were, if this was to be implemented and all that, the punishment for worshiping an idol is, you end up getting beheaded. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen, or it's going to even be a world where the Noahide laws are actually laws, even though one of the laws is to establish laws in the country that you're in. But it's just really interesting to look at. But it is a movement that's growing. So
Yeah.
I probably waste a lot of time.
Ultimately, so
Yeah.
I would be hyper skeptical as its global success for a few reasons. One is it's ultimately based upon some element of a biblical worldview. I don't picture the world accepting that anytime soon. And when I
Yeah.
say the world, I'm talking like pretty much hardly anybody. Also, this is my view. I believe the world is way too anti-Semitic to be like, yeah, let's do this Noahide law thing. I think the world
Yeah.
is way too anti-Semitic to ever get down with that. So I
Yeah.
understand what they're saying. I don't think it's likely to happen. Um,
Yeah.
if I had to guess, if someone said, "What do you think like an end times religion will look like?" My little guess I would make would be some form of statism,
Mm.
where it's kind of close to what we see in like a North Korea and those types of places, except on a global kind of with a smile type thing, and it's ultimately where the state owns your kids and the state is the highest power, and that I think that makes most sense, and that would make most sense for a government to enact, and it's also the most hypothetically sustainable. It's not going to be based on some Christian worldview or anything like that. It's going to be based upon the common good for everybody, and the state obviously would have an interest in promoting statism. So that's of course, and I could preface it by saying secular statism, but that would be my thought. But how'd you get into looking into that, Chris? Do you talk to these folks regularly? Are you like, what's your because I don't really know
Uh,
of any apologists focusing on the no. I know people who focus on Hebrew roots every now and then. And by the way, I'm having Solmberg on pretty soon too, or whatever. But how'd you get into this?
well, just kind of looking at just all different types of debates, and like even just watching a bunch of different rabbis and lectures and trying to get the Jewish
YouTube,
perspective.
Clubhouse. Where you going for this?
A lot of YouTube, just different rabbis. I wish I could remember some of the names of the rabbis that I've watched, but it is a prominent thing that is being pushed. So, but
Michael Brown, has he talked about this yet?
I'm not sure.
You
I
should
should look.
see. I'd be curious. I'd
But I
love to hear
haven't.
his perspective.
Your statism thing makes a lot more. That sounds probably more realistic in the next 100 years or so. And you think Christianity will definitely be illegal in that type of one world
So
system, right?
that would be my again. This is based upon my understanding of the text now, not a prophetic prediction, because I always got a lot, God is ordaining what he's ordaining. And so I
Mhm.
understand that. And so I'm just trying to sort of understand the times and seasons type thing. But yes, so the question before you was a position you don't currently have vocab that you could hypothetically adopt. And for me was amillennialism. But I'm not an amillennial guy. I just respect the position and I could see someone convincing me. I'm historic pre-mill. What that means is the church does go through a 7-year tribulation. It does go
Oh,
through
that
that
was one of my
period.
questions.
Yeah. So people will say post trib, but people who are historic premill don't refer to their position as post trib because post trib is usually based upon the concept having to do with the secret rapture. I don't hold to any version of a secret rapture belief. I'm not a dispensationalist. I'm not a progressive dispensationalist. And so, because of that, yes, the church is going through the rapture, or I'm sorry, through the tribulation, but the rapture and the second coming are the same event. Saints are caught up
Mhm.
and come back down, and then there's a 1,000-year reign, and that's why I'm still historic pre-mill because I do still hold to the 1,000-year reign because I do still see Revelation as being definitive. However, like I said, any Amil people I have out there who are really smart, come convince me. I'm not anti-Amil. I'm very open to being convinced, but as of now, we're going through it, people.
Yeah, that's kind of why I got into kind of that last subject, is because it's very interesting, like the kind of relationship and respect like uh, Jewish people or people who practice Judaism and Christians have. Because like during the rapture, it says that we're going to go up and then we're going to come back down and we're going to be converting Jews, and if they don't convert, then it's going to be all bad for them. And I think in the end time, isn't that correct?
Wait, That's not what I think. No, I don't think. I do agree. So the rapture. So this gets kind of complicated, but rapture is from the Greek word harpazio. Harpazio literally means caught up in Greek, and so caught up in the air. The question is, okay, for what, and then where do we go? Well, it seems the way that it is pictured in the New Testament, the harpazio, is all part of the same event that is understood to be the second coming or the second advent of Christ. So, resurrected, caught up, and then we essentially join the royal procession of the heavenly King of Kings who brings his rule to earth. But at that point, my understanding is everything's too late for everybody. That's it. When Christ returns, after that, it's game over, basically. Except there are some questions about what exactly happens during the millennium. Meaning, are the people who survive the tribulation and are unregenerate, which is one of the problems historic premill has, by the way, because it has unregenerate people who survive the tribulation who are yet still on earth with glorified saints. I do understand that's one of the problems with historic premill, which I do hold to, but I understand it's sort of weird, for lack of a better word. Well, nonetheless, with that being said, it's essentially too late, it looks like, unless there is some kind of thing where those who are there and then brought under the rule of Christ have a chance at that point if they're still on. I don't know. I'm not certain on that. However, I think you might be referring to Romans 11. And Romans 11 talks about all Israel being saved. It's a big debated passage. What does it mean? My understanding of that is all those who he has predestined. Now, this is where my Reformed soteriology comes in, who are actually to be understood in some way of Abraham's descendants on a physical plane, even though it's heavily diluted at that point, but in some way associate with that. Whether the sort of blood is there, for lack of a better word, but associate with that, there will be a massive end times revival prior to Christ's returns. I was my understanding of people who had understood to be Jewish, but not that we're going to go down and try to convert them. If they don't convert, they get killed right then. Maybe I don't know if you're getting some of that from like the 144,000 or something like that, but that gets into another issue. My understanding of the 144,000 is essentially the church, and we could discuss that. But that's a lot, and I do have another person. But I appreciate the conversation. Have you been around before? Have we met? I mean, I don't think we have.
No, we haven't, but I've just been watching. I'll try to hop in the next one. Okay, I have one quick question if you can.
Sure.
Two, if you can rapid answer them. The first question is do you think the tree of life is still on earth being guarded by angels?
No. So immediately after Adam and Eve are ejected out and go, I believe it's east of Eden, there is a guardian there. You ain't coming back. You ain't coming back, you know? And I believe, even though the text doesn't say, it would seem that would be the state perhaps until the flood. The Bible doesn't actually say that it sustains until the flood, but at the flood, there's no way it sustains at that point. Here's what I mean by that. The world we live in is post-diluvian, not antediluvian, meaning the deluge has happened and now we're on the other side of it. So the landscape of the earth is radically different than it was before the flood happened.
I see.
And so we weren't there, and we don't have pictures before and after. However, we do have clues from the geological record and from the scriptural text that we could kind of say, okay, let's piece this together about exactly what was what. For example, I believe the Grand Canyon was formed during and after essentially the flood. For example, that'd be an example. If somebody wants more information on this, the classic book for it is Henry Morris and John Whitcomb's The Genesis Flood. That's the name of the book. But I think I've got one. I thought I had another one beside me, but I don't. I thought I had another one. But so with that being said, Garden of Eden, no way it would it be around after the flood's going to change everything. So the Garden of Eden's not here. In fact,
Yeah, I
If
see.
you read the rivers listed in relationship to the Garden of Eden, there's nothing on earth that currently matches that description.
Mm.
This is like, you read the way it actually is, and there's nothing that matches that description identically. It doesn't, the way those four rivers are described doesn't seem to exist anymore.
Mm.
So, last question.
Okay, let me see. I wrote it down. You answered that. Okay.
By the way,
Okay.
Quia Janae, thanks for coming through. And I did tell D New about what you said recently. And so it looks like you guys are going to link up to discuss what you're talking about, and I hope you can, and that's good. My bad, I was kind of slow on that, though, a couple of days behind. So I apologize, but it's good to see you guys connect to talk about that. And thank you, Alejandro, for supporting, and shout out to Nate and Dinu and all the other mods. Go ahead, my man.
All right. Last question is, and thank you for having this back and forth with me. Do you believe Darwin's theory of evolution is a satanic lie? And if so, are there any others that are accepted in mainstream society today that come to mind besides kind of like the obvious ones, like LGBTQ and stuff like that?
Yeah, so, Darwinian evolution is a perfect fake origin story for humankind, and in a larger sense because it connects to other theories besides that, because it's not just the origin of the species, but you have to get into chemical evolution and go before that, and then they usually connect it to some theory of the universe. Now, I understand Darwin himself didn't talk about all that, but it's one big godless theory. Now, people that hold to it say, vocab, you don't know what you're talking about, I understand that, but Ken Ham, some people don't like him, but whatever. It does have a book called The Big Lie. It's got like a picture of the Earth, kind of in the shape of an apple with like a snake wrapped around it or something like that. Pretty dope little cover, kind of symbolic. And that's the basic essence of it. And I do think that's the case, because it's like, okay, this is what this book tells you about who you are, but here's what you really are. And by the way, on the basic reading, it's an origin story that doesn't need God. Now, I know the theistic evolutionists will be like, well, God started the process, or God did this, or God did that. But if you just look at what it is, it doesn't need God. Now, obviously, I find it highly improbable, but if you take away Genesis as being an origin account, evolution is the only game in town, unless you're just going to go strictly superstitious, mystical into nothing, which evolution in some ways is, in my opinion, because it essentially violates the laws of science, I would say. So, and in fact, can't account for why they're there in the first place. So, yeah, I do think that's the case. I think the age of the Earth is a different. I know you didn't bring it up, but not
I was
as
going to ask about
pernicious.
it.
My view would be it's not as pernicious. Now, I know some of the YEC friends I have, Young Earth Creationist friends, would disagree and say, well, they go together. Yes, I understand that. But I do understand there's people who are old Earth creationists, and I find it less directly contradictory to the biblical text, and I think they're trying to make the most sense out of things. Now, there are, I think, more faithful and less faithful versions of OEC, Old Earth Creationism. Some basically do look like essentially step-by-step evolution, just under a different name, and ends up looking like the Biologos people. But other versions, I think they're trying to do the best they can with what they have, and I appreciate and respect what they're trying to do, even though I don't ultimately agree. Now, technically, the Bible doesn't say the age of the earth, but we're kind of reading things into there based upon what would be evidential from what information we do have. And, you put genealogies together and a number of other things together, and it's difficult to get more than, say, 10,000 years out of the age of the earth. It's essentially a conspiracy theory that I believe in, meaning I don't believe in a lot of conspiracy theories. But what I mean by that is essentially a conspiracy theory. It's something that the mainstream would not agree to, that I'm saying we're essentially being lied to about this issue. It's similar with evolution, but I think the age of the earth is, in a certain sense, even more so, because I think that's more of a given to people, even that hold to some form of special creation. But those are good questions. I don't know if that helps, but,
It does. Yeah.
Satan wants to upend Genesis in every way. He wants to say, no, God didn't create, Genesis 1:1. And then he wants to go down and say this: no, God did not create the male and female. And that's what we're looking at right now. The TS revolution, if you know what I mean. He's saying, no, didn't even create a male and female. And people were buying right into it. And it relates to an upending of Genesis 1. God created everything because no longer do we have a signed order by a creator who's over us. So we're essentially making up our own destiny. But it's all make-believe. At the end of the day, our DNA still says the same thing. So they all do connect.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, I appreciate the back and forth. I have more questions. I'll get on the next one. I'm going to hop out and enjoy the rest of the show. And blessings, bro. And stay safe.
Dope. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Zebulon. Don't worry. It's not a trick. I know what's going on, bro. Come back. Come back. There you go. All right. There we go. Now you're disappearing. What's going on? Now we're just getting ahead. At least you're not working this time, though, right? At least you're not working. Where are you going? What's happening? Can you be heard? Can you be seen? What's happening, Zebulon? Oh, let me turn up your volume. My bad. That's my fault. But your camera, what is going on? You're going
hello.
blank screen to an eyebrow. Help me out here. Go ahead. I'm listening. You can be heard.
I'm sorry, man. All right, cool. I just wanted to...
Hold on, Zebulon. Is
have
there
a
a way you
quick
could be louder?
discussion.
You are super, super quiet,
Thank
and
you,
your
thank you,
camera
thank
is
you.
too close as well. Could you?
Can we
Is
go
there a way to get
Hosea
louder?
1?
Huh?
And can we read verse 8, I want to say?
Brother, I can barely hear you. Can you guys hear him? Do you have like a microphone or a headphone jack or something you can speak it to or something? You're like really quiet. You might need to yell or something, my man. Like, get loud, you know? What is happening? What is happening? What's up to the live chat? How we doing? Anybody else able to
Hopefully
hear
this helps.
Zebulon? Huh? Bro, you're coming in, you're coming out. Can you establish a better connection? Because I can't hear you and I'm also having trouble seeing you. So if you could call back, let's give it a shot, okay? Let's give that a shot because we're not having success there. Okay, we've got the link is in the live chat. I've pinned it to the top. It's also in the description box. Give me a second, and I will also put it on the screen. That's like a copy-paste type situation. But I will put it on the screen. Zebulon, you came in, and then you came back out again. I don't know what's going on, man. But I couldn't hear you anyway, so it's, it's kind of also irrelevant. Hey, can someone look up? I'm not a huge, football guy, whatever, but I am kind of curious. Could one of you football nerds look up the score for the can you look up the score for me for the Jets and the Bills playing right now? See, I got family in the Buffalo area. And so it's not really just a matter of like, me being a big football guy per se, but it's just the fact of like having family there. That's it's like a sentimental thing, it's like something like that. So, they always want them to do well. So I always want them to do well. And maybe you guys could help me out and let me know, are they doing well? Okay, let's see here. We're working through this, trying to get this to be seen. Let's see here. Bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing. Okay. Try to make this look a little bit better. Okay. All right, so that's on there as well. Oh, thank you, Rochelle. Bills 13, Jets 6. Appreciate that. Okay. Sounds about right. I caught it a little bit before halftime. But I was kind of doing double duty because me and my son were also watching a documentary about 9/11. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you guys about real quick. But, yeah, Eric, I saw Aaron Rodgers got hurt right away. That's crazy. And it was the first drive. I don't hope nothing bad on anybody. You don't want the guy to be down the whole season. That is real crazy. Don't you think? What's up, Walsh? How you doing? Walsh is in the building. Walsh keeps it real. All right, people are asking for a freestyle. Listen, after these freestyles air, these freestyles, like, they're real low budget, but I'll just here. Turn this beat up a little bit. This is a beat by Jonathan Soko. Here we go. check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Yeah. Okay, I'm in the building. Some say I'm like a villain. Amen, they call me hey man. Sometimes they even call me Mr. Bayland, but I'm not. But I love hip hop, but not more than I love the block and its doctrine. Now we rockin' in the spirit, how I'm walking. Don't be mocking. I got the moccasins. I be going everywhere and I'm stopping sin. Well, I hope. Yeah, inside my heart, nope. I see the dark, but I see the light. I see the light. Yes, indeed. I'll rip it right upon a microphone vocab, but no, will I spit this poem straight from the dome? Should I turn down volume? Yes, yes, y'all, I hear the boom. Boom, room, they call me Mo. Vocab alone, got the Ohio flow, freestyle, yo, it's O-Y-O. Now it's ill like a crack vial, so we call it dope. And that's what, yes, indeed, now we say, let me clear my throat. Jesus the Christ, that's what I wrote inside my Bible. Spark a revival, call me disciple. I got no rivals. Remember that game called Arch Rivals? Yeah, that was kind of. And I'm liable to go real off. Yes, yes, y'all, so sick that I cough. I might scoff an atheist. Peep this, got an ill playlist. Who's up in it? We pumped a fist. It's got some artists from Columbus. Yes, y'all, Mr. Gray and my man, Mr. B. What you say? You know who I'm talking about if you listen. Vocab alone. Shout out to Gibson, Nicholas. I see you wash. Thank God he let me live to be an adult. Now it's not my fault if I'm so whack, but I spit when I talk. I'm like the Hawk, I'm turning green. I spit these words, they're clean, not obscene. I got my jeans and some Puma sneaks. Yes, indeed, the beat breaks us a break beat out of a milk crate. Well, thank God the beat's fat, lightweight on a really, really, really large woman. Here we come again, you know I be bumming, yeah. Can I borrow $1? Vocab alone, wanna be scholar. Back in the day, riding in the Impala. I ain't got it, but I pop the collar. Not a Rottweiler, but a Doberman. Vocab alone, come over, man, to the crib. Let's read some books, I live. So take a look, page 22, page 33. That's the reference for you and me. I got D-E-B, A-T-E-E. That's too many E's coming up real soon against my man. Yes, indeed, it's Captain Taz. We will read Matthew and Luke together. The style's hotter than the Phoenix weather. This is the end of the freestyle. Turn the beat up to 10. We gotta end. Soko on the beat. Nice beat. All right, we got a couple people, you know. Just kill some time. Just kill some time. But here, we're back. We are back. Okay, I got you, Ephus, and we got Slick Willie. Slick Willie, where's your face, my friend? And hopefully we can hear you, Slick Willie. Why can't we see your face? And you're muted, Slick Willie. The name says Slick Willie, by the way. I'm not just saying that, everybody, in case you thought I was being funny. You know, that's what they used to call Bill Clinton. They called him Slick Willie. Well, Slick Willie, you've muted yourself and you're not showing your camera. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the other person until you can get your stuff together. Nothing personal, but now you've disappeared. So I don't know what's going on with Slick Willie. Okay. Ephus, you are here. Welcome to the program. You're moving around, but at least you're here. Let's see if we can hear you.
Yo, what's up, bro?
Nothing much. Good to see you.
Yeah, game time. First time calling. So just making sure I'm not out of context. Is this just kind of a free call-in? Any topics or
The smoke room. The only reason I was freestyling just a second ago is to kill time in between calls. So yeah.
But I mean, is smoke room any topic, or am I supposed to be on a certain topic?
No, it's any topic. Whenever I get downtime, I'll talk about 9/11, but any topic is good.
9/11. I got lots to say on that, but nah, just yeah, God bless, bro. I used to work with CMR back in the day, and live with DJ Essence in Philly with Lamp Mode, all them cats. So been around for a while, but yeah. But question for you is, are you up to speed on answers in Genesis, Ken Ham, and kind of their take on certain things?
I mean, I think I am, but not as much as an expert. I mean, I've been to the Creation Museum twice. I subscribe to Answers. I subscribe to Answers TV, the
Yeah,
streaming
yeah.
service.
So you like? I
And
mean, you like what
hmm?
they do? I mean, you in agreement for the most part?
Overall, I'm an AIG fan. No organization's perfect. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
We all know that. But overall, I'm an AIG fan.
Okay, cool. Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, I saw Ken Ham. I got a bit of a history. I mean, he don't hardly remember me, but I've been trucking with them for a long time. But I just saw him recently. He was in Jacksonville, Florida, which is close to where I live, and you know how it is. I mean, I didn't really have an opportunity to explain myself very well. I did follow up with an email to his counterpart, but I wanted to pick your brain. I'll try to make this short and sweet. But so they have some materials called, like One Blood, One Race,
Yeah,
one things like
I got
that. Which
I got those. I got the books. They
yeah,
made like a couple edition of those.
yeah. So I'm a huge, for lack of better words, a huge fan of that kind of stuff. Which I won't bore you with my story, but I even put out some music along those lines.
Under
One
EFUS,
Blood, Effusion, Effusion, yeah,
Effusion.
yeah, yeah. But I was trying to tell them, I feel like, because I think this ties into some of the work you do, because I've had some unique opportunities living in diverse communities, San Francisco, New York City. Um, but I was trying to tell them they already have so much material and so much content, um, down that alley. And I believe, and I've been saying this for 20 plus years, that tackling the race issue from a biblical perspective, I think is a perfect um, door of, as far as outreach and evangelism, to open the door to people that have false understanding of the origins, specifically the origins of humans, and from a biblical standpoint, one race, the human race, Adamic race, and then Jesus being the second or last Adam. I just feel like everyone in this world can relate to race, especially with the hot button issues that are always popping up on the news and
Yeah.
media and social issues. But I was trying to tell them, like, yo, I feel like, because they do so much outreach to the church, which I think is wonderful and necessary, but a lot of what you're doing is, from and the little bit I've seen, reaching out to people with different beliefs, whether it be Hebrew Israelites, or like I have friends from back in the day from Rastafarianism, and just different
Right.
stuff that gets outside of the mainstream, for lack of better terms, white Christianity views and this and that. And I just feel like everybody can connect with race, and it's just such an opportunity to bring up that subject and then focus. Hey, we got the answers from the scriptures: one race, one
We've
blood.
got
We
the
all go
answers
back.
in Genesis. That's what
Sorry,
we
what's
must
that?
go back. That's why we must go back to Genesis.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, Ken Ham. Here's the book you're talking about. One Race, One Blood. It is a
Yes, sir.
book that I would recommend for everybody. And I like the way they put it together because they deal with the issue from a biblical and then also a scientific perspective. And it's
Yeah,
funny because you're talking about being involved with hip hop and then trying to talk to Ken Ham and stuff like that. Well, he has a relationship to some extent with Hazakim. And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
one of their albums he was even on, this is Ken
That's
Ham,
right.
Answers in Genesis. And
That's
I
right.
think they did some stuff where they went to the art museum and all that, or when it opened and all that. And then also they got uh, one of the articles they did. and Answers, they featured Hazakim, and it was pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
The
Nice.
album Origins, because they have an album that's all about intelligent design. That's an album everybody should pick up. It's Hazakim Origins. Thing is fire, and it's way deep. It gets really detailed. But go ahead,
Yeah, I
because
gotta.
I gotta be frank. You were kind of rambling and not asking a question. I got love for you, but I don't know where you were going, because you never really asked a question or said nothing.
Hey, that's how I do it, baby. That's how I do it. All right. So my question. Well, no, you answered it kind of just. Are you in line with that? But I guess my question, and then I'll jump off so you can keep going. Is and again, I don't know if I eloquently explained it, but I just feel that if you use race as that hot topic fish on a hook, I feel like that is something that everybody across the world can relate to, that you can, and basically begin this conversation and then quickly pivot to, hey, like, we actually know the origins from the scripture, and that there's one race, and from that there's one savior. So one race, one blood. So I just curious, with the circles that you run in with Hebrew Israelites and stuff like that, if you're following what I'm saying, do you think that could be effective?
Yeah, I mean, there's some, AIG materials, I've even used for some things, and all that. And there's every now and then there's some of the Israelite folks are a little more sensible and have appreciated some of AIG's work. Specifically, I'm thinking a group that not even all of them would identify as Israelites, but it's a group called Yap Gang. Very industrious, smart gentlemen. I'm gonna be frank, not hyper influential in the movement, but still a welcome voice. They've actually went, at least some of them have actually went through the Traced book. Traced is a take on human genetic origins and movements from a biblical perspective, from a geneticist. Very interesting stuff. And I should have covered it at some point on this program, but I haven't. And there's that. Now, there's a lot of flat earth Hebrew Israelites. And so I've used some of the materials AIG has contra flat earthism. And I've tried to even show them some of those materials. Sometimes AIG will talk some about, alien phenomenon or UFO phenomenon. I've shared some of that stuff with people as well. So some things here and there, it is tricky though, because when you meld the science of it in the Bible, you would hope more Christians would listen and be interested. And you would hope even people that say they believe the Bible like a Hebrew Israelite would. But unfortunately, a lot of people aren't. I feel like a lot of preconceived notions get in the way a lot of times instead of just listening. There's these social considerations and this consideration over there. And it's unfortunate a lot of times because, of course, a lot of stuff you're talking about becomes a very divisive issues because they're already divisive issues instead of really a hook to bring people in. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's really divisive because people, the second you mention some of these issues, they want to fight, unfortunately.
That's the hook. Get them in the fight. No, but I hear you. So I'm going to take an opportunity to ask you one more question, kind of related. And this is an honest question. And if you got to cut me off while you answer, no worries. Like if I need to hang up, just let me know. But this is a legit question, and again, I have a background of, different people of different, diversity, just all over the place. But one of my best friends that actually helped lead me to the Lord, that's not quite as plugged into technology or, hip hop or the world at large, just a faithful man of God that's a little bit older. I feel like he's kind of been sucked into from afar some of the Hebrew Israelite teachings, and I know he's a believer. So my question specifically,
can you say who you're talking about? Is it someone involved with Christian hip hop?
No, it's just my friend, just good,
Oh, okay.
one of my best friends. Yeah,
because a lot of Christian hip hop guys, are getting into this. The most prominent example is Eshawn Burgundy, but a lot of people don't know, because I know you know a little bit about Christian hip hop. I don't know how far you go back. XL did all the bass lines on the early Brainstorm records that were put out by Dynamic Twins, Idol King, SFC, et cetera, et cetera. Now, not all of them. There's another bass player that was somewhat prominent in the liner notes, Clint Payback Sands. But XL did that and also would go on tour with Soup. And then XL had his own like rap rock band before that was popular called XL and DBD, which stood for Death Before Dishonor. His real name is Todd. And on Facebook, I love the brother and I respect what he's done, but he's kind of wilding out with this Hebrew Israelite stuff now. I don't know what to make of it. But your
Yeah.
friend is caught up in this. You're saying, okay.
Well, no, he's not caught up, but I've heard certain things he said. So here's my question, which ties right into that. And this, like, I don't have the answer to this. I have zero answer to this, because I know there's so many lies and so much corruption in this world. With all your studies, because you've studied way more than I have, do you think there could be any truthfulness to the fact of, for just to be blunt, that like, hey, the original Jews were of a darker skin tone, or what most people would say black, and that the current people of Israel aren't the real Jews? That whole line of thinking, like, I wouldn't be surprised because there's so many other lies in the world, but I don't know who to believe, who to trust. So in your
Yeah.
studies, have you found any that could be true, or do you think that's just not it?
Yeah, so the whole Hebrew Israelite story of history is largely wrong and incorrect and based upon basically bunk, the main essence of their story that they tell in most versions and variations. But the first thing you said was, well, what about the ancient Jews? Could they have been darker? Yeah, almost certainly they were darker. Then who, though? Then Ashkenazim, not then all Jews everywhere, but the Ashkenazi Jews, they went through Europe. And so because of this dispersion, Jews ended up coming out on the other side, not putting it, very technical, but basically looking pretty much close to their neighbors. And that's because of intermarriage and proselytizing and all that kind of stuff. So the Ashkenazim go through Europe. Surprise, surprise, they look kind of like Europeans when they come out. Same thing with people who went other places, though, as well. They come out looking somewhat like their neighbors. The ones who stayed closer to the original land of Israel most likely look closer to what Jews from 2,000 years ago would look like. But a lot of people groups wouldn't be the same as they were 2,000 years in a lot of ways. In fact, some of those groups, when you go back even farther, don't even exist anymore, like the Hittites. Hittites are not around as an ethnically distinct people group. Yeah, Blanco mentions the Limba. That's exactly one of the groups I was potentially thinking of. So the basic version is no, most of Hebrew Israelism is based upon conspiracy theories that are based upon bad readings of history and things like that. Now, the idea of real Jews, I'm not a fan of that language myself because I find the true sons and daughters of Abraham, biblically speaking, to be those who share the faith of Christ, not those who in some way think they line up with supposedly people who descended from him 4,000 years ago or something. So to me, it's not very relevant, important, interesting in a lot of ways because of my theological position that what really matters is those who share the faith of Abraham, the same pattern, which they trust God for what he says, and then he imputes righteousness to him under the new covenant. That means that Jesus is the Christ in essence, and we are saved by grace alone through faith alone. But with that being said, there are within the people group who identify as Jewish people Semitic elements in culture, obviously in language, and in genetics. But when you talk about, say, on the men's side, there's some studies I would think if you're just talking about genetics that may put it at 25%. Depending if you bring in all elements, maybe you could put it at half, meaning not everybody. And because basically those records are destroyed, we don't really know who's who for certainty. But there's some things that are sort of circumstantial evidence. But again, I don't really go off that because I don't see the Lost Tribe story is interesting and all that, but it's not very important to the Christian mission in my understanding. But here's the thing. Whenever you have a Hebrew Israelite present you evidence, you've got to look 2 to 3 steps behind it to find out really what's going on there.
Yeah.
Never, I'd hate to say this, but never trust their evidence at face value. If they share a quote with you, you better make sure that person really said that quote. Because if you don't, they'll trick you with fake quotes. Now, some of them pass on fake quotes and they don't realize it. So I'm trying to give them benefit of the doubt. Number one, if they share a picture with you, find out where that picture really came from and what it is. Do not trust their memes or here's this picture. If they tell you something was said or happened, you cannot trust it. And I'm not trying to be harsh, but I'm just telling you that's kind of how I've noticed, because a lot of conspiracy theories are like that, where if you just pull back the curtain and look a little deeper, they fall apart.
Yeah.
So with that, let me take some more people up in here, but I appreciate talking to you, my man.
All right. God bless, bro.
Yes, sir. God bless to you as well. That was somewhat similar to a question that someone in the audience brought, which is Stan Green. Can we ask vocab if he believes any of these so-called Hebrew Israelites are Israelites at all, or were the slaves straight African? That's a little bit of an insensitive way to put it. In my view, but there's multiple answers to this question. There's a certain sense in which we don't really know for sure. We don't know everything. We don't know everybody that came. We don't know. But then again, we do know some things. So when you talk about the transatlantic slave trade, man, you're talking about a long period of time. You're talking about a lot of human souls. You're talking about a lot of people. And you're talking about they went to a lot of places, including sometimes other places on the continent of Africa even. So this is a complex, sophisticated operation that, is done in an era that is before cameras and cell phones and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of look at that. Now, there are records, and there's some images, and there's drawings, and there's descriptions and writings and all that, right? But just saying that in and of itself, I kind of answered already with him. That's why I'm not going over the whole answer again. I'm only going over some of it. But even people dwelling on the African continent, the African continent is highly genetically diversified. Lots of different types of people there. Lots and lots of different types of people there. And, we say African because they're all from the one continent, but different ethnicities, different genetic diversity, as I mentioned, different language groups, different haplogroups, and a great diversity of people. So even just saying, well, straight African it's imprecise, right? Now, could anyone who had some Semitic ancestry been caught up in that? Certainly that's possible, but we're just not talking about the majority of the people. There's no indication we have to think that any significant number of the people caught up as victims in the transatlantic slave trade were Semitic in their ancestry as far as their primary point of origin, if you went several generations or perhaps millennia back. We just don't have good evidence for that at all, especially when you start talking about West Africa. There's some major gaps in their thesis. So thank you, D-New, for sharing that link, and thank you for the questions everyone is asking. Shout out to St. Ivan. St. Ivan, my man, did you know I'm going to have someone from the ICGJC on very soon? What was it? Is it this week or next week? I can't even remember. I need to look at my calendar. But coming up here, and they want to give their side of the story. And I try to be I want to be fair-minded, so I'm going to hear them out. And I think that some people are going to be upset that I'm letting them speak and air their side. But I think their voice needs to be heard because a lot of people haven't heard their perspective. Now, ultimately, I'm a Christian apologist, right? But I also value truth, so I want to know what's really what. And I'm hoping that we can get to the bottom of some of these issues by having some open discussions about some of this. So I don't know if you knew that, but if you look, the one that coming up says ICGJC tells their side of the story. It's supposed to be with a member from ICGJC or 2 or 3 or 4. But I'm putting your comments on the screen. I appreciate your comments. And Walsh, I'm also putting yours on there. Everyone subscribe to Walsh. He does a good job. Him and the brothers with him. Shout out to my man Walsh. There we go. It's okay, Stan Green. I'm not coming after you. I was just commenting on the question, but I appreciate your question. That's okay. What's up, old boy? XN Liquid Rage. Yes. So Princess Nyambi. So I'm agreeing with what you're saying there, as far as in relationship to that. So I appreciate your comment, and Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, there you go. Yes, thank you, sister. Okay, let's see here. I'm just putting comments on the screen right now. Stan Green says, "What is an apologist? What is an apologist? An apologist is a Christian who seeks to show the truthfulness of Christian doctrine and tries to explain the truthfulness of the Bible. Apologist comes from apologia or apologia in the Greek, which is from 1 Peter 3:15 and some other places as well. Paul uses the word, and it means to give a defense, a reasoned defense. So an apologist is simply a Christian who works to defend their belief. Part of the defense of defending your belief is criticizing beliefs that disagree. Polemics or offensive apologetics, you may call it. And especially those that run directly counter to key elements of the Christian worldview, such as Hebrew Israelism or Islam, things like that. And so that's what an apologist is. And there are other apologists here. D-News here. Walsh is here. So we've got quite a few here. And looks like Altier Aprago was gifted a membership by Corrence Chandler. Thank you very much for doing that, Corrence. That was nice of you. Very kind. Appreciate that. Yes. The channel was actually called The Reassembling. That's what you guys want to jump on there. Okay. Earlier, Israel Trump, whose profile picture is Arya, asked, "Is Ahaya the name of God?" No, Ahaya is not the name of God. Ahaya is the principles of Lashawan Quadash applied to a different name than Yahweh. Lashawan Quadash principles applied to Yahweh equal Yahweh. And that's the traditional One West view. When I say traditional, I mean we're talking about sometime in the 70s this was invented, maybe in the 80s, maybe as early as the 60s. But what happened is, of course, Elder Rakah of GOCC read some books, specifically the Illuminati 2. That's the name of the book. He brought it up in the James White discussion. When he read Illuminati 2, he believed that Yahweh was essentially the name of a pagan god inserted into the text by wicked idolaters, and that to use Yahweh is idol worship. So he applied the principles of Lashawan Quadash, so he still holds to Lashawan Quadash, to a different name and came up with Ahaya. It's ahistorical and problematic, but in a way doesn't sound as bad as Yahushai, but they're both wrong. Thank you for the question. An interesting profile picture. Reverend Nick says, "What is a critical cultural theological issue that is coming down the pike that we are currently dealing with as the church?" Speaking as a pastor theologian. I know you asked this question a while ago. Apologize, I'm just now getting into it. Well, that's interesting. I mean, my tendency is going to want to say Hebrew Israelism, right? That's the thing I see. But I mean, the big thing right now that I think is happening is the TS revolution. That's the thing that's going to upend everything. Have you guys heard today? Well, I heard about it today. It didn't happen today, I don't believe. But California is enacting a law. I think the governor has to still sign it, but Gavin Newsom's going to sign it. That says one of the reasons, and I'm trying to get it right, this is my understanding of the law that's going to be enacted. The legislature's already passed it, I guess. One of the reasons that your kids can get taken away from you or you can lose parental rights is if you don't affirm their preferred gender identity. This is draconian, utterly unbelievable, and goes along with rules now from their courts there in the districts of Cali that literally say not only is it we don't prefer to, or we probably won't, or we don't have to inform you if your kids decide to use a different gender pronoun at school. But now California is saying teachers are not allowed. There was a case in Chino Valley that this just happened. And the Chino Valley School District was a little more conservative, relatively speaking. I've actually been to Chino Valley for some Strong Towers stuff and all that. What you had happen there at Chino Valley is they said, yeah, we'll notify you. And the judge said, no, you can't. So you can't do that in California. Look up what I'm talking about. If you want a short version of it, look up Al Mohler, ALMOHLER, and look up his program called The Briefing. It's the one podcast I tell everyone you must subscribe to. It's about 20 minutes, Monday through Friday, and he gives the news from a Christian worldview and gives you a sense of sanity, though, because he helps you filter it and helps you understand it. But, you know, on the cultural side, there's that revolution that's happening, and I just mentioned in relationship to California. But as far as that theological side, I do think that Hebrewism is a thing. Pretty wild, right? Yeah, I see your guys' comments. Look it up. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's hard to say it and it be real because it sounds like I'm being sensationalistic, doesn't it? You know, that's what it sounds like. But it's pretty bad news. And so a lot of times the other states follow California. So we got some serious issues. Shout out to the live chats. Got some great people up in here. Yeah, I like your name. Christ Alone. That's a good name. Walsh asks, how many members does IUIC have, vocab? Well, let's talk about that. Through some various stats and rubrics that I understand to use, I've got this thumbnail number I've been using. And it's based upon a couple things, such as the size of their annual march for their men's thing, Passover, things like that. And I've been saying 10,000. And what's happened is you actually hear that number now in other sources. And the way you'll hear it, you may not know, but I'm the source of that number. So there's some actually Jewish sources, because I've seen the media, that don't cite or quote me when I give the estimate of 10,000, but they're looking at another article that I was interviewed in, and they're taking that number and saying, yeah, it's about 10,000. So that actually number is being used. However, with that being said, but it's being used because I was a source. I know this because I know how the train worked, the chronological timeline of when these certain videos and articles came out, a certain amount of time based upon this interview and who saw it. Anyways, long story. However, Walsh, I have had recently some conversations, I have to be careful how I say this, with a couple of people in a couple of different Hebrew Israelite organizations who are a little more open than others. So I'm not talking about snitches. I'm not talking about ex-members. I'm talking about people who are in there currently who think that they're right and I am wrong. However, they're not as closed and scared and insular and sealed off as some of the other groups. And so they've actually freely shared with me some of their numbers. I'm not going to say which group or anything like that. I'm just saying I can't give all the information here because I want to respect the gentleman involved in all of that, because I said I would. I took it in confidence. Now, here's why I preface that. My estimate of their numbers was much higher than the number they gave me. And I shared that with them, and they explained to me, unless they were, just outright being deceptive. And in this instance, I don't think so, and I have a reason why I don't think so. The number they gave me made more sense when I looked at certain things, and they pointed those things out to me, and obviously they're in the organization. And I know I'm talking long and around this because I'm just trying to be respectful and careful. My point is, my estimate of them was wrong. I had overestimated how many members they had. And it was a good, humbling experience, and just shows that there's multiple factors to consider in this. And so when I say 10,000, I think that's a future projection at this point. I'm gonna lower it based upon some other things since then. Not that they went down, but my understanding of their organization had some flaws in it. Closer, maxing out at maybe 8,000, no lower than 5, at least 7. Now, I know that's a range for IUIC, but I would say I think it's closer to 8,000. not 10,000, like I had said in times past. Now, they're on their way to 10,000. In fact, I would say they'll be at 10,000 in 2 years. 8,000 is still a lot, right? And now Blanco makes a good point. They still have a large following. Being a member and a follower are two different things. That's a great point. You're exactly right. Let me tell you something. You go on Clubhouse, right? I didn't even know this until recently. There's something called the Biblical Smoke Room. I didn't realize the Biblical Smoke Room was like a Hebrew Israelite thing, and I didn't realize it was an IUIC thing until somewhat recently. I had a rude awakening with how I found that out. Well, unless I'm missing something, and all my sources confirm this is true too, we're constantly trying to get more accurate here. The Biblical Smoke Room is the biggest Bible talk discussion room on Clubhouse. And they do sometimes have 10,000 listeners in the rooms. It's an insane amount of people who come to this joint. And they will do it like all the time. They'll have this thing going on. Now, with Clubhouse's new updates to the app that a lot of people aren't happy about, I don't know if that's the case currently as far as the 10,000. And I think that was the upwards number. But you're exactly right what you're saying. And we're talking about some serious influence. And that's why you see Nathaniel doing a lot of media.